answers that what. It gives you, it helps to start adding in that context that you need to say, okay, I know that I need to write something and I know there's a flow, right? I know there's an objective of each place, but I'm not 100% sure what the heck I'm supposed to put in here. How are regular folks like you and I that aren't blessed with massive marketing budgets supposed to compete in spaces that take a ton of money, a ton of time, and a ton of resources, all while trying to stay sane? That's the question. And on this podcast, we're here to help you find answers. Welcome to the Marketing Stuff Podcast. Welcome back to the Marketing Stuff Podcast. Last week, we talked about the 5 key skills that you need in order to become the most effective marketing professional, whether you are a budding entrepreneur, new into the marketing space, or looking to transition from your current career into marketing. Well, that episode's fantastic. And today we're going to continue on. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty of one of the skills that I talked about, and that's copywriting. So on this episode, I'm going to give you some basic understanding of what copywriting is, why it's so important, share with you some techniques that you can apply right away to start improving your writing. Yes. I'm going to share with you some books, lots of books, and I'm going to give you some other channels that you're going to want to pay attention to, specifically on YouTube. And then I'm going to share with you, I got one course that I think is fantastic. Why is copywriting my number one skill? And let me be clear, I am not a copywriting expert. I am good enough to be dangerous.
Let's get dangerous.
But why is this so important? Well, if we think about what copywriting is, which is, salesmanship in print, or the system of generating sales in print, right? Then it's important to understand that really effective copywriters not only understand how to write great content, they also understand the process of generating the ideas that you need in order to create that written content, and how to move a customer from where they are in their journey to where we want them to be, right? There is a mental process that people have to go through before they're ready to purchase something from you. And really great copywriters understand that. They get that how those pieces need to fit together before a customer is ready to say yes. And so that's the part that getting really great at copy and at least seeing that picture in your mind will help you as a marketer. Hey, Maurice here, different Maurice than from the show that you're watching right now. If you want access to all the resources that I'm talking about and you don't want to have to write them down, in the notes below, you'll find a link. If you register there, I have included all the resources that I talk about inside of this free database. It's yours. So get back to the show. I hope you enjoy. Let's talk about some techniques that you can use, right? So how do we get started? Because this is a really big thing. When I talk about marketing, the biggest challenge that I see when folks are like, how do I get better, is thinking about marketing as one unit, one thing that they can improve. And the truth is, that's not what it is. It's a bunch of individual skills that you have to tie together in order to help a client or customer move from where they were to where they are. And if you start looking at it like individual skills, instead of asking, how do I get better at marketing, you can ask a better question of, how do I improve the skills that make me an effective marketer, right? When we think about how do I improve the skills, well, understanding that there are a ton of really great frameworks in copywriting, some that you can apply right away in order to improve your skills. And I want to give you one right now, because you could take this, use it on your next social media post, and you're probably going to get a better result. Okay. So let's work through that together. The first one is ADA. And this by far is probably the most used, maybe the most famous. And I squint a little bit because I almost feel like it's the oldest copywriting model. And it stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And these are the phases that a customer needs to move through in order to say yes, right? And we can see these in funnels, not the online versions, not sales funnels, but the actual process that somebody moves through. I know there's a lot of process here, but the truth is a lot of stuff in marketing is about the process. We see that in sales funnels. We see that in when we're thinking about how do I convince someone to do something, right? We have to take them from non-interest to interest before they can accept our ideas. And so the idea is if we start off focusing on what is it that I need to do or say to capture my customer's attention? After I have their attention, how do I pique their interest? Once I've piqued their interest, what needs to happen in order for them to desire what it is that I'm talking about before I can trigger them to take an action? Now, this is a writing framework, or it's a framework used in writing for copywriting, but it's also the framework used when we think about marketing funnels, which is part of the reason why I think copywriting has to come first, because it teaches you these frameworks that you then realize is like, oh my goodness, this is essentially what I need to do, not just in what I'm doing in my writing, but also what I'm doing in everything. You can start using that right now. And there are tons of resources online that'll walk you through it in much more detail, and you can get really nitty gritty with it. But that would be the first piece that I would say when we start thinking about like, how do I do this? Well, most of what we're doing when we're talking about copywriting is trying to get someone that is not ready to say yes, trying to get them to move to kind of that next step. And there's a lot of tools that you can use, psychological tools that you can use to kind of grease the wheels. And there's a book, Behavioral Science and Marketing. I'll flash it up on the screen, by Nancy Harhot, and she really like dives into these and gives you 20 plus mechanisms that you can leverage when you're writing or when you're doing your marketing. Now, I'm not going to cover those. If you want that book, go grab it. It is phenomenal. Nancy is amazing. She's always down to comment on a post on LinkedIn or respond back to an email. Great, great marketer, amazing professional. So if we can apply the AIDA model, and if we can leverage, some simple psychological principles, it's much more likely that we're going to get a client or customer to do what we're asking them to do. So those are the first two things that you can do. Really easy. Doesn't take a ton of time to apply those things. You can pick one or two, and then you can try to fit them into what you're doing, and that can be a win for you right there. Right? Okay. So I said I was going to share with you some books. I have quite a few. Again, don't worry if you're like driving or you're watching this passively or whatever. By the end of this, I'm going to share with you how you can get a copy of these notes, so you don't have to worry about trying to keep up with them or figure out how to find this stuff. Right? Okay. All right. So let's talk about the books that I have for you. So the first book, I just so happen to have a copy here in studio while recording, and it's Copywriting Secrets. And if I'm honest with you, this is the book that I would read first. The reason why I would read this one first is because it's very approachable. Some of the copywriting books are written at a level of like they can get confusing. They can get confusing if you don't have a point of reference. And the next book that I'm actually going to recommend talks about this idea of like, a lot of copywriting books are written for people that have a point of reference. And unfortunately, when you're new, you don't have that. And the second book is written by Kyle Milligan, and it's called Take Your Money. And this is, I almost am tempted to call this a key, less of a book. Because what he does in it is he talks about copywriting from the standpoint of a language and teaches you how to understand the language so that you can use it to your benefit. And when I read his book, I actually read his book and I have the audiobook. When I read his book, it was the first time that somebody articulated copy as a language, right? And not, let me backtrack that a bit. Learning to do copy the same way you would learn to read or write any other language. And that's really starting to understand how to piece it together. What is the structure of the language? If you've ever learned a language, you know where I'm getting at. So that's the second book that I would recommend. I think you still need a point of reference as far as some of the stuff that he talks about. Kyle gets into some verbiage around different pieces, copy elements. And I think Jim Edwards does a good job of assuming you know nothing, absolutely zero, and giving you some stuff to kind of like add to your scaffolding, right? I think about learning almost like when you first start, there's nothing there, right? There's nothing to grip onto. There's nothing for the information to hang on to. And so step one is by building something for information to hang on to. Step two is to add elements or scaffolding that gives you places where more detailed information can hang on to. And so Jim is the frame. Kyle will give you the scaffolding. Now, some of these other books are going to give you uh, some other pieces that you can add into. But I think with Jim and Kyle's books, they'll take you a pretty long way. So let's talk about the third book. The third one is called Copy Logic. This is another book that talks about copywriting from a structural piece, more specifically getting into sales letters. But if we think about copy and sales letters, right, all being like a framework, if you really understand how to put together the pieces, whether it be in a sales letter or in a physical space, you get much better at least thinking through the process of creating copy. I don't really have a ton that I'm going to talk about that book. It took me a few years before I finally decided to read it, but it was worth the read. All right, let's talk about book number 4. I had a hard time with this one. There's 2 books here, and I really wasn't sure which one I would say is the 4th one, but I went ahead and I said it's Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. This book to me is really great for you to just understand, again, like breaking down the steps that you need to have in order to like write a sales letter. How this differs from Copy Logic is that Copy Logic tells you like here's how the pieces fit together, but it's not really telling you how to put the individual elements of the pieces together. I hope I'm not confusing anybody. Do me a favor and just drop in the comments like if I'm making sense. Number 5, if I'm counting correctly, number 5 is the 16-word sales letter. What I found when I was working with the Ultimate Sales Letter is that I was left with questions about like what do I write? What what do I put here, right? And the 16-word sales letter answers that what. It helps to start adding in that context that you need to say, okay, I know that I need to write something and I know there's a flow, right? I know there's an objective of each place, but I'm not 100% sure what the heck I'm supposed to put in here. Okay. This one book-wise is a little on the higher cost side, but it's a really great book. Again, this is one that when I first looked at, I was like, what? And then I bought another book that cost me about $150 for the one book. And then I went back to it and I was like, oh, that's not bad. Uh, it's funny how we anchor things. And if you read Nancy Harhot's book, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say anchoring. There are tons of courses that you can take. The one that I like the most is, as far as like if I was going to start this all over and learn direct response copywriting from the ground up, is Digital Marketers Direct Response Copywriting Certification. And then there's a company called AWAI. They have a copywriting course as well, specifically focused on sales letters. Those would be the two courses that I would say are probably the most effective as far as the costs available and getting you the support that you need and yada yada yada. Both of those are probably about $500 plus. So if you were to buy both courses, you'd probably be out of $1,100, $1,200, right? I did tell you I was going to give you a channel. I've already mentioned his name, but I want to be like, let's throw the flag up and let's be really intentional here. And it's a channel called Copy Squad, and that's ran by Cal Milligan. Dude's got some amazing content on there when we start talking about copywriting. And the reason why I've kind of put the recommendation further down is like, if you're still watching this, it's because you legitimately want to get good at this skill. I don't even know how long I've been talking at this point. We're about 24 minutes. And if you're still watching at this point, you want to get good at copywriting. And so his channel, that's what it's for, right? So go check his channel out. I've put a link for his channel in the show notes so you can grab that, jump over there and see what he's got going on. So that's what I got for you. I appreciate you hanging out with me on the show. If you want a list of everything that I've shared, along with some bonuses that I didn't share because the show was getting a little bit longer than what I wanted, down below you're going to see a link that will take you over to like a quick sign up page. I just need your name and your email, and I'll send you a email that will have a link to a database that I'll just start adding the resources for all my shows in. So that way, no matter what happens, you won't have to worry about like any of the shows that you catch. It'll be constantly updating. So anything that I think is cool, we'll go into that. So that's my gift to you for watching the show, subscribing to the channel, and being part of my village. Outside of that, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Stay out here, one of y'all.